Operation Castle, the fifth in a series of tests at the Pacific Proving Grounds. Another accumulation of men, of machines, another meeting of ships and aircraft and troops. Here was the best of physics, of metallurgy, of electronics. During the months after the historic Mike detonation, preparations for a new series of tests to solve the problems of a deliverable megaton weapon went ahead at an accelerated pace throughout the country. Operation Castle became a reality and is now successfully concluded. The report which follows is a summation of what occurred at the Pacific Proving Grounds during that operation in 1954. Here to lead off this record is General Clarkson, Task Force Commander.
Operation Castle was concluded on the 14th of May, 1954. Castle was an all-thermonuclear test, a test basically of devices in the megaton range. We feel that the report of this important test should give the failures as well as the successes, should reflect the changes in thinking that occurred during the test. We hope this treatment will help you understand the problems that were experienced during the course of the operation. This program encompassed then 3 shots on land and 4 shots on barges. Our main base camp on Bikini was located in the same island complex. The firing station to be used on all Bikini shots was located on NU Island. Parry and Eniwetok Islands on Eniwetok Atoll again functioned as the center of land-based operations. This then was the weapon schedule and the operational plan for Castle of March 1st.
Parry Island, Eniwetok Atoll. This is the 3rd time this island has been used as the headquarters for a Pacific Task Force. For this operation, a weapons assembly area was constructed at the southern tip of this valuable piece of real estate. This is the first time on any operation that weapons were assembled on Parry and then moved out to the firing site. Weapon development would be impossible without diagnostic instrumentation. But such instrumentation is expensive, very expensive at this distance from home. For this reason, extensive instrumentation was limited to a few shots, and each diagnostic experiment was carefully considered before being included in the program. This instrumentation, while more elaborate than that of other shots, is representative of the type of diagnostic studies made. Recorders to read the yield of the primary bomb from its rate of neutron multiplication. Cloud sampling for radiochemical determination of fission yield and to assist in determination of total yield. High-speed cameras and photo towers for ball of fire photography to indicate total yield of the device. Scopes recording electromagnetic radiation and cameras, both to obtain the time interval between primary and secondary bomb detonations. Other cameras to look directly into the open door of the cab. A great mass of information was gathered as a result of an array of 12 evacuated pipes. These pipes are like peepholes, looking at portions of the weapon's case to pick up gamma and neutron emission from many stages of the reaction. Starting at H-48 hours, all personnel at Bikini Atoll were evacuated from the scattered islands and moved aboard task force ships. The only men to remain were the members of the firing party, protected in their bunker on NU Island. Once more, for the first time since Operation Crossroad in 1946, Bikini took its place in the story of atomic testing. The date was March 1, 1954. This photograph was taken from an airplane at 50 miles. The width of the fireball at this time, about 3 seconds after detonation, was 4 miles. The frame size of the picture is 6 by 8 miles. The top of the fireball at this time, 40 seconds after detonation, was 5 miles above sea level. Proved that we can have a high-yield weapon weighing less than 10 tons.
The tremendous yield resulted in a serious fallout situation at Bikini and certain other atolls downwind from ground zero. This was the forecast wind direction. The actual wind was in this direction, some 10 degrees less favorable than forecast. Even so, the winds were within the area of acceptable fallout. However, the unexpected high yield caused significant fallout to occur on Rongelap Atoll, 110 miles distant, on Rongerik, 150 miles from Bikini, and on Uterik, 280 miles out. After the natives were evacuated, radiation survey teams were flown back to the exposed atolls, where studies were made and water and soil samples taken. Rongelap had a native population of 82. Evacuation was carried out on the second morning after the shock. Rongerik had no native population, but was occupied by 28 men of the task force. 8 men were evacuated by air at H plus 28 hours, and the remaining men soon after. Uterik had 150 natives, and they were also evacuated, although radiation levels here were relatively light. The removal of personnel from the contaminated atolls was done mainly by destroyers. These destroyers were attached to the task force primarily for security purposes, but were easily adapted for use as evacuation vessels. All of those exposed were taken to Kwajalein, where complete physical examinations were carried out. Every effort was made to assure their comfort and well-being. Fallout on Bikini temporarily rendered that atoll unusable. 25 R per hour was recorded on Enement, our port of entry. On NU, the site of our control station, 35 R per hour was recorded. Hundreds of Roentgens per hour were measured on Ammon and Bikini Islands. Even if radiation had not been a factor, blast damage on Enement was considerable. It would have taken a sizable effort to make that island again usable as a base camp. The ground shock and fallout experienced by our firing party on NU forced us to give up the idea of a manned station. The necessary electronic systems were installed on the USS Estes to permit firing remotely by radio. The possibility of further damage to previously prepared shot sites at Bikini caused us to change our schedule at this point.
Back in the States, at about the same time Castle was in operation, the results of these drops, plus tested fusing and firing systems, made it possible to have a deliverable weapon ready, a weapon approximately 19 feet in length and 5 feet in diameter. While the case is made of aluminum, this is by no means a light weapon, since it weighs 43,000 pounds. It was put aboard its firing barge. This was the first time that the barge method of firing was used. It was felt that if firing could be done from a barge on open water, it would result in an appreciable reduction in fallout, as well as a considerable simplification of operational problems.
It proved a difficult shot to get off. We had to postpone 14 days from the scheduled date of firing because of weather. The winds continued to swing around, blowing to the south and then to the west. This took 10 days. Then for 16 days, the winds remained in this sector. Since Eniwetok was in this area, it might receive fallout if the winds were too close to a borderline condition. At 7 a.m. on the 26th of March, the forecast was for a favorable wind in the right direction. The shot was set for 6:30 the next morning, the 27th of March.
On this rather unimpressive barge, floating in the Bikini Lagoon, rested a device which carried the hopes for a large step forward in the weapons development program. The distance of the camera aircraft is 50 miles. The frame size of the picture is 14 by 18 miles. The film is running at normal speed. Looked from Inuitak Atoll, 200 miles away.
Daily commuting from ship to shore cost several working hours per man each day. We had to watch the radiation doses received by the people working on the test island. A maximum of 3.9 Roentgens per man was set for the operation, and with minimum readings of approximately 100 milliroentgens per hour, the men had to work fast.
As on previous tests, the armed forces took advantage of the Castle series to broaden their knowledge of the effects produced by high-yield weapons. As an example, there has been much uncertainty in specifying the minimum safe distance for aircraft delivering high-yield weapons. Blast and thermal effects were measured on B-36 and B-47 aircraft, positioned so that some damage was expected. This data will help us to specify the yield at which parachute drops are required for delaying a detonation, as well as providing us with answers to many questions which arise when positioning for multiple drops is considered. The whole picture of fallout contamination becomes of increasing importance with high-yield weapons. In one program, drone ships were sent into fallout areas to evaluate the worth of a washdown system for ship decontamination. We found we could measure fallout even in large ocean areas by making aerial surveys using extremely sensitive radiation detection equipment and with surface craft such as tugs and destroyers. As a result of these measurements, we were able to document for the first time fallout data from high-yield detonations. It is now known that fallout from the larger Castle shots blanketed areas of more than 5,000 square miles with radioactive material that would have been lethal to unprotected personnel. This one result gives a new insight into a method for using high-yield weapons in both strategic and tactical situations.
It is now around the 10th of April, and the recap of our story of Castle. 3 shots down and 3 to go. The weather continued to work against our keeping a firm firing schedule. During the middle 2 weeks of April, we were faced with the same situation. The winds above 10,000 feet were again in an unsafe direction. Under these conditions, populated areas were directly in line of fallout. Again, we postponed, awaiting a favorable forecast. This occurred on the 25th of April at noon.
Anchored in his location off the island of Urochi, 0 hour approached. The time of firing, 6:10 on the 26th of April. Camera position, 50 miles at 10,000 feet. Size of picture, 14 by 18 miles. Photographed at normal speed. The yield was 7 megatons.
The weapon was scheduled for firing on the 5th of May. This was 10 days since the last shot. For the first time in the operation, we had what could be considered a normal interval between shots.
On the 16th of April, a Strategic Air Command B-36 landed at Eniwetok Island. Camera position, 50 miles at 10,000 feet. Size of picture, 14 by 18 miles. Photographed at half normal speed. The sixth and final shot of Operation Castle. This device was also flown out to the forward area for final assembly at Perry Island. The barge was towed directly to its 0 point at Eniwetok Atoll. Here, over the spot that was once the island of Alujilab and is now the Mike Crater, was anchored in position. At 6:20 on the morning of May 14th, the smallest device of the operation was ready. This test initiated an investigation of small, lightweight thermonuclear weapons in the megaton class. Size of picture is 14 by 18 miles. The yield was about 1.7 megatons, essentially as predicted. From this firing, we learned that we have the capability of developing megaton weapons weighing less than 10,000 pounds.
Castle was by far the most complex and significant operation in the short but impressive history of nuclear testing, and in my opinion, absolutely vital to national security and the security of the free world. We were beset by operational problems of a magnitude not encountered previously. The degree of flexibility attained by the task groups and by the task force as a whole in meeting these problems is only one example of the spirit of cooperation evidenced by all members of the free services and by the members of the Atomic Energy Commission and its contractors. To the men who made Operation Castle a success, to the same men who were asked to undergo many personal hardships, I have already expressed my gratitude. I am sure that these men also deserve the sincere appreciation of the Department of Defense, the Atomic Energy Commission, and the people of the United States. This concludes the report on Operation Castle.
official film report of a test of atomic weapons at Eniwetok Atoll. This test took place in the spring of 1951. It was carried out by the 8,500 members of Joint Task Force 3, men drawn from the Atomic Energy Commission, its contractors, military, industrial, and educational laboratories, and from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Wood Quesada, United States Air Force. Dr. Alvin C. Graves, Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, Deputy Commander, Joint Task Force 3, and Scientific Director of the program.
During the tense days of World War II, an entire American city of men, women, and children was hidden behind a seemingly unimportant postal number, Box 1663. Today, such secrecy is no longer possible. Today, this city boldly and proudly parades the normal pattern of American living. This now appears to be an average city of schools and playgrounds, of houses and apartments, a place to live where men and women can feel at home. But for all of these things, this city is not an ordinary city. This is the mile-high city of Los Alamos, the atomic city. This is a modern pueblo created by the people of the United States as a research and development center for atomic weapons. This is still a city where citizens take for granted security fences, guards, passes, caution. The proof testing of weapons, a routine practice by now, is the job of a busy section of the Los Alamos laboratory called J Division. With such a specialized division carrying on tests, the other parts of the laboratory, operated for the Atomic Energy Commission by the University of California, can continue undisturbed in vital research and development work. One of the proving grounds is an outdoor laboratory, Eniwetok Atoll in the Central Pacific. This trust territory of the United States has been used before as a testing ground for Operation Sandstone in 1948. But 3 years have passed since Sandstone, 3 years to bring new and improved atomic weapons to this secluded equatorial land, this land of spaced islands arranged like individual beads of a necklace. And the new test operation will be called by its code, Greenhouse. But Greenhouse means more than just a proving ground, more than a group of scientists from Los Alamos. Operation Greenhouse is big in logistics, big in the scope of its aims and purposes. To meet this problem, a self-contained unit, a task force, is organized. This is a 4-part organization: Atomic Energy Commission, Army, Navy, and Air Force, working together under a unified command. As for the larger scope of Greenhouse, it is a real challenge to include in a test all of the valuable experimentation that can come out of the detonation of atomic weapons. The armed services, for instance, have a continuing need for information on the offensive and defensive effects of atomic blasts. In these days of international tension, they need to know the physical results of atomic warfare. Even though Los Alamos is the parent laboratory, so to speak, scientists and technicians from other government agencies, from American industry, colleges, universities, and other organizations throughout the country, men working in related fields, are asked to participate to help in instrumenting the operation. Since Eniwetok is a distant and primitive area, men have to leave their stateside laboratories and homes for a period running into months. Since 1943, when Los Alamos was established, Men from this mesa have left the continental limits of the United States twice before to test the weapons they have created. Now the proving ground comes alive, like a university campus when students return from the summer holidays. Parry Island is home for Task Force headquarters and for the scientific group. Eniwetok Island is home base for the Army and Air Force. The Navy stays aboard its ships anchored in the lagoon. These are the dormitories of Eniwetok University. Spread out and separated from the dorms by a safe distance are the laboratories, the individual test islands, seemingly like so many science buildings on college grounds. The long-awaited forward area work begins. Even in a world of tension, atomic energy is more than thunderous test detonations and calculated planned devastation. We still have much to learn of our nuclear fuels, uranium and plutonium. This is the precious stuff so valuable it makes sought-after gold seem like common scouring powder. Whatever can be done to conserve it is to our national advantage. To proof test weapons scientifically and accurately, it is necessary to know the behavior inside the weapon, and also to know the outside behavior of the forces let loose, the effects of the weapon, the facts and figures on blast, heat, light, radiation. Weapon designers go to great lengths to get this kind of information. For example, to measure blast, instruments are suspended from these plastic balloons. This gives a pressure reading in free air. High-speed cameras capable of taking several million separate pictures per second are placed close to 0 point. They will record the story of nuclear forces from a vantage point where man himself dares not stand. Radiation will be measured by devices on whose photographic emulsion will be indelibly imprinted the record of swift-moving, invisible nuclear particles. Men of greenhouse tackle their Eniwetok problems with the same kind of scientific approach they use in their own home laboratories. Attention to detail, elimination of variables, a check and double check of key apparatus. This is actual on-the-spot experimentation. There is no running back home for a forgotten test tube. And then the time comes for which all know. And the men of greenhouse move back. Like a crowd at a beach aware of the incoming tide, they pick up their belongings and retreat to safety. A test shot is ready. Watch an atomic test. Watch. From the wealth of diversified crafts and skills that go into the making of a great industrial country are drawn those men with the specialized skills necessary to understand and measure atomic detonations. But to maintain these men, to carry on a weapons test on this specific outpost, support is necessary. Not alone technical support, but the kind of support concerned with just plain everyday living. There's a detail like food, for instance. It takes more than a picnic lunch to keep 8,500 hard-working men happy. And it's no trick at all to get hot and dirty and dusty. If you don't believe it, try a coral atoll sometime. Water is the answer, but water is a crucial commodity. It has to be pumped from the coral beds, then distilled to remove the brackish salt. And then there's the problem of getting to and from work. Most of the time, walking is out of the question, unless you have a natural tendency to be amphibious. Small boats ply between the various islands of this giant lab in the middle of an ocean, and light planes are in constant demand for shuttle service between the islands. Although the armed forces perform the unheralded but necessary job of supporting Operation Greenhouse, it is not their principal role. Like the Atomic Energy Commission, the Army, Navy, and Air Force are here to learn. This is a chance for them to study a weapon still new to warfare. The more the services know about the effects of atomic weapons, the better able they will be to use them, if necessary. To get the answers they need, Samples of the type of tools a military man uses are arranged at various distances from 0 point. An armored tank. This powerful land weapon of the Army has instruments mounted inside, which will record the amount of heat an atomic bomb creates in the interior of a steel hull, how much radioactivity, how much pressure. A bomb-proof roof, capable of withstanding an atomic blast directly under the detonation point. Just how thick should it be? How much concrete? How much reinforcement? By studying this building, representative of structures in industrial areas, the Air Force will gather data on the effect of atomic bombs on potential industrial targets. What will happen to this airplane wing when blast and heat hit it? What will be the effect on this fuselage? To be more realistic, these aircraft will actually fly into the blast area and record the results. They will find out how close an aircraft can come to the heart of the explosion without suffering serious damage. All of these things to learn more about the tools of atomic warfare. At Joint Task Force 3 headquarters on Parry Island, the commander and his staff make their final decisions for another 0 hour. Weather information from the scattered outlying meteorological stations, from the reconnaissance squadrons, comes funneling into headquarters. Precipitation, winds aloft, cloud cover. The weather situation is good. The decision is made. Now in dramatic pre-dawn darkness, the drone aircraft are ready to take off on their missions. Giant planes without a living man on board, and with all their tons of weight and thousands of horsepower, flown by a remote control officer on the ground through an incredible gadget in his hand. On signal, the first safety crew abandons its drone. Comes now the fantastic achievement of a 4-motor bomber, taken safely off into the air by those distant magic fingers, which then, with even mightier magic, switch the manless controls of the drone aircraft to a mother plane aloft. Each mother hovering impatiently to take its crewless baby on through the darkness, guiding it into the unknown. To top the fantasy of the crewless bombers come the fighters. For the first time in airplane history, drone jets, pilotless, crewless, at super speed flown up into the night sky, controlled only by a driver and overdriver in other jet aircraft who electronically guide the destinies of their jet drones. As in previous atomic tests, the drones are flying laboratories for the scientists. High above the test islands, they are in a strategic position to collect important information on the still not so familiar event, an atomic blast. Watch. Services bring themselves up to date with the results of the latest atomic weapons, the men of science are thinking beyond current weapons. They are exploring new horizons, looking for data basic to the science of nuclear physics. Atomic investigators cannot tell whether their calculations were right or wrong merely by watching a weapon go off. They must find out what goes on inside. They must attempt to look into, to understand further the invisible world of the atom. It is difficult work, complex, thought-provoking, calling for mental courage and physical stamina. Without delicate instruments, they would be lost. For what they're searching for is in a world so small that the average human mind balks at trying to conceive of it. We speak so glibly of time, yet do we have any idea of a millionth of a second? Instruments such as these oscilloscopes have the ability to measure events that occur during the sub-fractional span of a heartbeat, of the 1/1,000,000th part of a second. But atomic energy is not being channelized to weaponeering alone. To learn more about the effects on human life, medical experiments are being run. Test animals will be used to enable men of medicine to learn what pressure, heat, and radiation does to living tissue. A nation gearing up to an effective civilian defense program must have all the answers. Facts about radiological medicine, detection devices, protective materials. As an illustration, these mice will be exposed to varying doses of atomic radiation, and medical men will study the results. Information gained from buildings will help determine the vulnerability of United States buildings to atomic attack, so that adequate civil defense planning may be carried on. Materials are to be exposed which are considered as potential fire hazards in atomic warfare. Such information will influence defensive thinking. It will aid in the selection of materials, design of equipment and structures, disaster planning. And so, while tests which can affect the security of a nation wait, while naval vessels make their ceaseless security patrols, while radar scans the skies, while military police guard the beaches, in the master control station, a door is closed, padlocked, the single key put in the pocket of one man, head of the firing party. No one will enter here until the party returns from its final round of checking circuits, closing switches, making ready for the release of nuclear forces. The firing party returns to its home island, and all is put in readiness. Before the break of day, another momentous blast will light the pre-dawn sky over any Weetok, set into being by a mechanical gadget called a sequence timer.
1 minute.
Series of atomic tests to measure and understand the nuclear forces of the atom is over. And Iwitaka proving ground shrinks again to garrison size. But preparations must be made for another series of experiments. The need for continuing tests of atomic weapons is self-evident. We need now, as never before, to expand our knowledge in the field of atomic weaponeering. If any one group of people recognizes the urgency of time, it is the people living and working on this isolated mesa in New Mexico. the men of Los Alamos return to their mile-high, security-guarded laboratory to continue with the development of nuclear weapons and important research in many other aspects of the atomic energy program. The people of this mesa well know the important responsibility placed on them. For what answers are found within a seemingly insignificant building, what happens behind the wire fences, what a man carries home with him, and for security's sake will not speak of. These things are vital to Americans everywhere. The city, once secretly hidden behind Post Office Box 1663, today is so actively and openly engaged in the atomic energy program that it can no longer be cloaked behind a postal number. For this is the city designed and dedicated to the study of nuclear forces in the atomic age, a study which concretely means to the American people that new, improved atomic weapons have been developed and proof-tested. The nation's stockpile position has been bettered. We have added another stone to our small pile of knowledge about the complex nucleus of the atom. We have gained important offensive and defensive knowledge on the effects of atomic blasts on military equipment. We have also learned necessary, realistic lessons for our own protection. We have studied defense for the individual, defense for the nation. As a result of atomic tests, such as Operation Greenhouse, we are gathering the know-how, the strength to defend that which we prize so highly, the land that is our heritage, this land that is our home.
Today, whatever you are, whatever you do, wherever you may go, you are a part of atomic warfare. It involves you, personally, in laboratories and in the field, in little-known places and ways. Units of the defense establishment of the United States are learning to work with atomic weapons, learning to strike, learning defense against the effects of atomic weapons. Blast, heat, light, radiation. Military units work continuously with the laboratories of the Atomic Energy Commission and their new weapon ideas. The services devise handling equipment and techniques that are practical, and delivery methods that are deadly under any and all conditions of weather and warfare. 13 minutes from now, this airplane is going to drop an atomic bomb on your country. You will see it happen. Fall 1950. A fierce international war rips through a small country on the North Yellow Sea called Korea. Russia has successfully detonated an atomic bomb. Now the Alamogordo of the Ural Valley is a fact. Now more than ever before, the balance of international power rests with atomic energy, with weapons moving steadily from assembly line to stockpile, moving to hidden subterranean vaults to be stored, ready and waiting. But stockpiling alone in this day and year is not enough. We need to develop and produce a greater number and variety, and possibly even more powerful atomic weapons. Weapons tailored for specialized uses and targets. The biography of every atomic cloud is essentially the same. The intense heat and violence of the fireball as it sears the sky causes the spectacular and colorful rust-like condition in the air around it. As the fireball cools, an enormous vacuum and afterwind is created, causing the desert floor to rise up into the cloud itself, to form the characteristic mushroom stem. The cooling also sets up a rapid condensation in the air around the fireball that sometimes produces layers of ice crystals, literally an ice cap. Knowledge gained on previous nuclear weapons tests has produced the theory that once the cloud has formed and stabilized in the sky, the vitally significant fission products and so-called unburned fission fragments don't distribute themselves evenly, but tend to collect in very large, invisible pockets, hot pockets, or cells inside the cloud.
The particles that are suspended in these nebulous cells indicate many things that happen inside the bomb, as well as the efficiency of the fission reaction. So attempting to locate the cells and collect samples from them is a mission of the highest priority. Re-enter our display areas close to ground zero once RadSafe okays us for the move up. Since the biggest value of the operation is for us to prove to ourselves that it can be done and find any weak points in the training, psychiatrists are with us to study our reactions before, during, and after the experience. It's quite an experience, no matter where you are to watch it. This kind of experience is immensely valuable for any military man.
Participation in Cactus supplied low-yield coral soil data for comparison with results obtained in Nevada soil from shots of similar yield. COA provided high-yield data for comparison with the low-yield cactus data obtained in similar soil. Successful measurement of neutron flux and spectra were made for a number of ranges. In the structural effects studies on the B-52, sufficient data were collected to substantiate a correlation between measured and analytical responses. This will establish a workable and reliable side-load computation procedure. Yucca, the first of the 3 high-altitude shots, was prepared and launched from the flight deck of the aircraft carrier USS Boxer. At 1125 hours on 28 April, when the Yucca balloon was released, the USS Boxer was operating about 90 nautical miles northeast of Nan Island, Bikini Atoll, maintaining a deck wind velocity of near zero. 2.5 hours later, 1440 hours, at an approximate altitude of 85,000 feet, Yucca was detonated by radio command signal. Failure of the telemeter command transmitter to activate the canister instruments prior to burst time resulted in almost complete loss of data from the balloon dragline equipment. The aircraft-mounted instrumentation provided excellent data. The Teak and Orange missile shots were fired from Johnston Island, about 720 nautical miles southwest of Honolulu. Each device was sent aloft by an Army Redstone missile. Attached to each missile were 4 pods, released during the acceleration phase of the Redstone. 3 of the pods contained telemeter-equipped instrumentation for the nuclear program. The 4th pod, programmed to be closest to the detonation, was utilized primarily for studying the vulnerability of ICBM structural materials. The first of the 2 missile shots, Teak, was launched on 1 August. It was planned to detonate at 250,000 feet, approximately 6 miles south of Johnston Island. However, due to a programming failure, it burst directly over the island at the desired elevation. Orange was launched at 2330 hours from Johnston Island on 12 August. It was detonated at an altitude of 141,000 feet, approximately 26 miles south of the island. A brief recapitulation of the findings in line with the general objectives sought from Teak, Orange, and Yucca shows first that high-altitude nuclear detonations are characterized by the rapid development of energy phenomena. Most spectacular was the extent of the fireball growth on Teak, the highest of the 3 shots, a diameter of 10 miles in 10 milliseconds, accompanied by a striking visual aurora.
Ethan Allen submerged to firing depth. And there it goes. Polaris on the way with a nuclear warhead. Right on the second, the missile detonated at the intended altitude at the target point. Service ASROC missiles with nuclear warheads were taken aboard the designated firing ship, the destroyer Agerholm, and her backup, the destroyer Richard B. Anderson, and were stowed in their launchers by the ship's regular ASROC crews. Intensive preparations stressed the most advanced safety and protective measures. All was in place and ready. Aboard Agerholm, the ASROC launcher lined up on target. The rocket-propelled ASROC headed toward target. In the foreground is the firing ship. 27 seconds later, the warhead splash penetrated to its set depth. At this point, the service fuse completed the firing cycle and the burst exploded skyward. As the burst fell back, the base surge formed. A heavily radioactive cloud of spray and mist which spread to nearly 1 mile in radius. A few seconds later, the detonation bubble collapsed. This caused a new plume to be thrust upward through the primary cloud. And this impressive view of the shock wave spreading across the water was seen by the crew of another helicopter. Beneath the sea, the crew of Razorback experienced the effects of the shock wave in a strong shaking that lasted for 45 seconds.
One of the prime missions of tactical aircraft is the delivery of nuclear weapons following a low-level approach to the target. The methods selected for delivery and escape will determine the success of the mission as well as the safety of the pilot and the aircraft. This is an actual retarded lay-down delivery using a practice weapon. Aiming through the gun sight is accomplished with the sight depressed. When the pipper crosses the target, the weapon is pickled manually. Lay-down is a very accurate method of delivery. Just before the weapon is to detonate, the airplane is pulled into a 15-degree climb with the tail toward the blast. With the thermal shield closed, this attitude provides maximum protection from weapon effects. The weapons are being loaded aboard the aircraft. In this case, both weapons are B-43s. In preparation for delivery of the second weapon, the pilot adjusts the AMAC for an airburst and checks his remaining weapon. He also selects loft on the CP-741. Because this is to be a loft delivery, when the IP is crossed, the bomb release button is depressed and held. This starts the computer.
The Johnston Island portion of the 1962 Dominic Test Series, conducted by Joint Task Force 8, included 2 types of tests. One involved a number of high-altitude nuclear detonations carried aloft by various missiles launched from the island, and the other was a group of 5 airdrops over the ocean clear of the island, but within the Johnston Island danger area. The first of the Johnston Island high-altitude firings was bluegill. Ignition of the propulsion system appeared normal. And liftoff was as programmed. The range safety tracking radar lost track, and it was necessary to destroy both missile and the warhead after a long flight on what was later analyzed to have been the correct trajectory. The next attempted high-altitude shot was Starfish on the 19th of June. It, too, was unsuccessful. On the 8th of July, Starfish Prime, the second try at Starfish, was launched and was entirely successful. The warhead detonated at an altitude of 400 kilometers, 31 kilometers south of Johnston Island. On 25 July, the Thor vehicle for Bluegill Prime had a one-of-a-kind casualty, diagnosed as a sticking fuel valve, which caused a fire at motor ignition. Both missile and warhead burned on the launching pad. Damage to the pad was extensive, as could be plainly seen next morning. Less visible, but more dangerous, was the long-life radioactive contamination of the pad area from the warhead. The remaining 4 events, Checkmate, Bluegill Triple Prime, Kingfish, and Tightrope, were all successful. In flight, the pilot will select an arm position. At release, a pulse of current is transferred from the aircraft to ignite the pulse thermal batteries. The parachute is deployed.
With over 6,500 aging classified nuclear weapons development films located on Kirtland Air Force Base, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a smaller number at Albuquerque's Pantex plant near Amarillo, this joint Department of Defense and Department of Energy effort will preserve and allow appropriate release of this valuable historic information.